So I'm Sammy Mosher. I'm a third-year PhD student at the University of Arizona studying medieval Japanese religions. So my research usually will focus on Oni and their positionality within the Hell Scrolls, which are 12th century scrolls that depict the scenes of hell. And we'll get to see some of those today as well. But for the most part, I kind of wanted to show everyone Oni and their historical origins, how they got into Japan, how their imagery has evolved to become the kind of the hot guys and girls with horns nowadays that we tend to see in anime, and how interesting that flex was over time. So I'll try and save time at the very, very end for questions. So if you think of something, feel free to ask. If nothing else, I might say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll try and research it and find out later, because knowing more is always good, especially if in academia. And as a note, I'll make the beginning of this little show like kind of a little more academic focused, but later on we'll get into the media and the fun bits that come. So I wanna learn you something while we do it all. All right, let's go ahead and go on in. My presentation is a glimpse of protruding horns, Oni in Japanese history and media. So, what are Oni? It's kind of a loaded question, and it really has a lot of different answers. So, if you just want to translate it from English or Japanese to English, it's ogre or demon, but without all of the Judeo Christian overtones that the word demon can portray. So, it's actually a lot bigger than that. So, they originated in India, actually from Yaksha, and here is a very simple statue, a classical statue from 100 BCE of the of a yaksha, and they're just supposed to be spirits of nature. There was no horns, there was no ferocity. They're actually, playful, benevolent at times, a little bit, tricky at others, but generally neutral to good spirits. So that's kind of their like Hinduist origins. And Hinduism and India and Buddhism kind of blend together in a lot of places because yaksha also exist simultaneously in Buddhism in India. So in Buddhism, they're servants of the god of war, Bishamonten in Japanese, which is the more familiar word for me, or Vasravanya in Vaisravanya. I don't speak Indian very well, or well, Hindi very well. Um, so here you can kind of see a little shift. He doesn't look like he's like this menacing figure, but you could see from his headdress, kind of the wreathing clouds and fabrics kind of going about him, that, oh, this is maybe a little closer to what we've seen. And because they're servants of the god of war, they also have their own ferocities as well. You can see this is a much later image. I just wanted to show a very crisp, clean picture. So this is from the 1500s as opposed to the other one, which was actually 100 years BCE. So there's over 1,000 years difference here. But for the sake of showing you crisp, clean, and slightly less falling apart objects, I'll try to mix and match our eras a little bit. Okay. And then these figures, the yaksha, go to China and kind of evolve into the native Chinese guishan. Guishan. There we go. I'm not very good at Chinese. These are essentially ghosts and they're spirits of the dead. These are very neutral. This is kind of where it blends a little bit into paying respects to one's ancestors and trying to honor the dead in general, taking care of people when they die to make sure they have a good passing and that their bodies are taken care of properly once they die. But generally, these spirits were invisible to the naked eye, so any paintings we see are kind of just what you would see if you could see kind of concepts. And here you can kind of see things start to change. So you can see this one's from the early 11th century. But these, they look a little bit more like our Oni. You can see the one on the left-hand side, he's got like tiger stripe pants. The one on the right's got leopard spot pants. And they also have kind of beastly faces. And they're actually carrying one of the gods around. So they're working as servants here rather than, malicious spirits. So these are very, very neutral in an understanding. And let's see, Buddhism in general spread to the Han Dynasty in 206 BCE to 220 CE. And yeah, you'll see my cats will wander around as we do this. Thank you, buddy. I love you too. But now is not the time, son. Okay. And so from China, the concept, or at least the origins of Oni, started to spread by means of Buddhism once again. So the Japanese Oni came into Japan with the spread of Buddhism in the 6th century. So you can see there's roughly a 400 year gap between when they spread to China versus when they spread to Japan. And it really did just come over with Buddhism. It wasn't really a concept too much before that, at least not visually. The idea of Oni had existed before this, but much like the Chinese. I'm not going to try and say it again. The Chinese ghosts of the dead, they were invisible to the naked eye and they just kind of did their own thing. But in Japan, they were kind of less neutral and they could be very bad or very good. So they had a lot of flexibility in sort of the Japanese folk religions. But there's not that much research or information or even surviving documents from before the 6th century in like Oni and Oni imagery. It's really around the 6th century that Oni actually started to become something of a little bit of more of an icon within Japan. So here is the one of the very, very first Oni images that actually exists in Japan. These are the Hell Scrolls. This is essentially the object of my existential crisis and pain and suffering as a PhD student. This is one of the focuses that I'm working on. So these are our very first Oni that we get image of. This is a zoom in of one of the Hell Scrolls, the Hell of the Iron Mortar. You can see that the Oni here, they are working in hell to punish people who performed badly in their previous life, making poor choices. So don't be like these guys, don't make poor choices. And these were essentially you could see the image is a little rough because it's quite old, but this one Oni in the back is feeding humans down into this giant iron mortar, and these other Oni are pulling the ropes to make it grind and rotate to crush the people into a pulp. And then the one on the right has the remains of them and has kind of got I want to say like a sieve or like a filtering device to where it's shaking out the blood and like soft refuge to keep the bones. We don't know why, but generally when you go into these like into Buddhist hell, it's a temporary place where you'll exist until you basically carry out your sentence for being a crappy person, and after that you get to be reborn into a different existence. So this is terrible, but it's also temporary. Okay, so let's look a little bit at the etymology of Oni as the word and the character and pronunciation and see kind of where it came from, since we have a bit of a long train of hundreds of years from India to China to Japan. So the Nihongi, which is the Japanese Chronicles, one of the earliest texts in Japan from 720 CE, used Oni to refer to deities who refused to submit to the rule of the Yamato clan, which I guess would be based on the empire clans and everything, which where the emperor himself was a part of. And so this was kind of a very generic word used towards them in general. And it wasn't read as the word Oni back then, so the character was actually read as Ashiki or Ki, depending on where it appeared and where the pronunciation made sense. Sort of like the letter A in English is never always pronounced A, it's A or different sounds. You know, the characters in Japanese also have different sounds, but a little bit more wild. So rather than, just being a simple sound change, it can be a whole different word. So this, even though it used the character for Oni, it was not read as Oni. It was read as Ashiki or Ki. And then later in the Manyoshu, which is a poetry collection compiled around 759, it's a compilation of poems, so it's not really 100% a set date. But the Manyoshu is a collection of, it literally is a collection of 10,000 leaves, so probably 10,000 leaflets of poetry, even though I don't think it's quite that big, but very poetic naming. So this also used the character. However, it was written as mono instead of, it was pronounced as mono instead of as oni, sort of like mononoke, which you can see here I have written out in kanji for the old reading, and then the modern reading of Mononoke as well. So those of you who liked Princess Mononoke, the Ghibli film, you could see that the one on the right is the one that we use in modern times, and that's what you'll see on the case cover of the movie if you have it with the Japanese cover. So it was written differently back then as well, pronounced as mono. Still had bad meanings. Mononoke meant before this and after the kanji changes over hundreds of years. It still meant something mysterious, something unknown, and just kind of referring to the supernatural. It especially referred back then to the ghosts of the deceased or the spirits of people traveling around while they're sleeping, especially in like the tale of Genji and other old classical pre-modern literature. So if you like those kinds of things, go read the tale of Genji. It's a pretty fun read. You're going to hate the main character, but it's okay. The side characters make it worthwhile. And then we have Wamyo Duijusho, which is an annotated collection of Japanese nominations. Fancy words for saying it's a kanji dictionary, or it's a dictionary of concepts with kanji associated with it. So it's a 10th century kanji dictionary. It might be the very first use of the pronunciation of oni with this character. Now, it's hard to say because there's probably still documents out there that people haven't uncovered or are sitting in an archive somewhere buried under dust that we haven't gotten to read. But, 10th century, that was a long time ago, as, you could think we're in the 21st century now. So this might be, at least right now, as far as we know, it's the first use of oni with this character. So pronouncing it as the modern way that we know today. And it was explained within this that the pronunciation of the on, or onu was another way to read it, actually came from this other character, which meant to conceal or to hide, which kind of fit the early oni idea that oni were invisible or hidden to the naked eye. Humans could not see them. So, kind of a little bit of, there's a lot of different like theories on where the pronunciation and everything came from, and we'll actually go to that one next. I'm not sure where I stand in all of it because there's just so many things out there that it could be. I need to really dig down to really know my own research before I can have a solid opinion. So continuing on, the other theories, oni referred to big people, literally big people for the characters, giants, which were large cave dwelling people, which is possible, especially in, old ancient Japan. There's all kinds of different types of people coming in and out of the archipelago itself. We don't know. And who knows if some of you are like the Bigfoot and Yeti types, maybe this was a traveling Yeti group or something. And then we have Oni, which is honorable, and then the second character is number 2 or the second. So I like to translate it as the noble secondary because this would refer specifically to the Tohoku region, where if you don't know what that is, it's just like northern areas of the main archipelago of Japan. So Tohoku region folklore that kind of put Oni as only second to the gods themselves. So they were not equal to, they were very clearly marked as secondary, but they were still respected because of this very first character, which generally means it's a little bit rough, but like honorable or respected or any kind of trying to talk someone up. We'll sometimes use this character even in modern Japanese. So for those of you who are taking the language, eventually you're going to run into that one. And then we have two different ones that kind of come from a little bit more specific areas, once again in the Tohoku region. So we have Mare Bito, which is like divine beings, divine. It says Bito like person, but it wasn't necessarily meaning that they were human, just meaning that they had the overall shape of a humanoid. So arms, legs, upright walking. And marodo, which was guest and then person, which usually referred to guests from afar rather than just when your neighbor comes over. So these kind of used, not necessarily synonymously, but were used kind of in Tohoku region to talk about when you're hosting foreign guests, because it's believed when People come into your village from outside, because generally different individual little villages are standalone units within Japan almost. So if somebody comes in, they're believed, at least in some regions, to be deities from another world visiting, so you would treat them well. Other places, not using these exact words, but they were considered ijin, which is outside person or unknown person, and killing people who come into your village from, unknown regions was also a thing because it's believed in some places that they were like an evil spirit that is coming into your village and you need to get rid of them, which the practice in some places was to kill them. So, yay. Back, don't go to ancient Japan as a non-Japanese person or as someone from the outside because you may get invited into someone's home and have soup. You may get murdered. You don't know. Okay, so the Oni form, this one actually has a lot better data. And I apologize for using the simplified Chinese characters on the right. I just really liked the image. They're very well, they're not really that similar to the Japanese characters in some places, but for those of you studying Chinese, at least that'll be a fun one for you. So this is the zodiac that I have there on the right. Of course, the Chinese, the East Asians like zodiac itself rather than our, I'm a Scorpio or a Cancer. It's like, no, I'm a horse, I'm a snake. So this is useful here because we're going to get into the talk of Onmyodo, which is like the way of yin and yang. It's not a religion exactly, but it kind of could be considered one. So it's a form of divination based practices, which is very much related to constellations, reading the stars, energies, yin and yang vibes, everything. So this kind of came into Japan, like yin and yang concepts came from China in the 6th century, and that included the 5 elements of Taoism, which is very much like a Taoism or Taoism, however you want to say it. And it refers to like, oh, like earth, water, fire, all those things, and how to use them for divination and also protection and fortune telling. So this developed about 3 centuries later into Japanese onmyodo, and that was in the Heian period. So this is where you can imagine people with many layered robes in beautiful homes, at least if you're aristocracy. And if you know a little bit about folklore and history, you know onmyodo, a famous figure was Abe no Seimei, and he was probably the most famous practitioner in this time. He actually worked for the imperial court themselves, and that way he was kind of his name got to live on very well. And if anyone plays any of the video games or sees the animes with this guy in them, and he's this beautiful boy, go look at the old paintings. He was just an old man with a beard, and he was chunky and just kind of like bleh, little goobery looking. So I love that he was a little goober, and we've changed him into this beautiful man because I like a goober form much more. All right, anyway, back to the point. So the Onmyodo and like the divination practices is kind of related also to the zodiac animals, and each of these animals were assigned a cardinal direction, so like north, south, east, west, etc. So where this might have come from, this whole Oni shape, the reason they look the way they do, might come from Ushi Tora, which is the northeast direction. So it's assigned to the ox and the tiger direction. So this image I have there, it's not referring to directions or north, south, east, west. This is just the following the chain and the order that those go in. I couldn't find any good Onmyoji maps that weren't absolutely chaotic to look at, so I tried to simplify it down. So the northeast is the ox tiger direction, and it's considered very unlucky, and it's associated with Oni because it was the direction that evil spirits could travel through. So this is kind of where we get a little bit of our, oh, wait, Oni have horns. Oni, they were classically seen to wear a tiger pelt as like a loincloth. Okay, we might be getting some of that imagery built in. And also think too, this is 9th century. This is ages ago. The imagery develops very, very slowly over time. So nothing was a very sudden and fast change here. So, ox and tiger, both of these are Japanese paintings. I know the tiger is kind of a goober looking tiger. The reason is tiger skins traveled to Japan, through trade and gifting and everything. So Japanese people had an idea of what a tiger looked like, but there were no tigers in Japan. And of course, this is pre-photography as well. So a lot of artists painted tigers very creatively. This one's actually one of the best ones I could find. It's more or less a house cat with tiger stripes and big claws. So it's much better than the ones that look like an unfortunate creature birthed from horror. But you can get the idea here. Ox, we have horns, hooves, large bodies, kind of lumpy, lots of extra skin on an ox, and then tigers, claws, shining gold eyes, and also the stripes. So we could see, oh yeah, I could kind of see how that turns into this. So this is a much, much later painting. I'm just a big fan of this one. This is 1764, so you can see there's a huge time gap here. But you can see, look at his horns. Those are the horns more like of an oxen that you would see in Japan that would be used to pull carts for nobility. And he has a tiger skin pelt. Very realistic stripes because, of course, the pelts managed to get into Japan quite readily, but the tigers themselves, of course, were never taken over. So you can see, oh, okay, a little bit of the imagery kind of is making sense. The ox and the tiger combined, lumpy skin. The colors, those kind of came in all different rainbow shades. Red, green, blue, black, and yellow are the most common types, colors of oni skin. There are different ethnicities within, I suppose. And you'll also notice the number of horns and the number of eyes can vary quite a lot. So some only have one horn or two horns is, kind of the two that they'll end up with. And for eyes, generally it's two or three eyes. I don't really see a lot of one-eyed oni. That's usually different types of yokai, which anyone unfamiliar with the term, it's kind of the uh, base word for Japanese monsters and spirits and things. I like to translate it with the kanji as a bewitching apparition because that's what the kanji itself means, and that's my go-to translation that I've come across and kind of gotten attached to. So if you want to think about oni, oni are also within the wider umbrella of yokai. So sort of like all oni are yokai, but not all yokai are oni, all lions are cats, but not all cats are lions, that kind of concept. So there is one thing that I always see people get tattoos of this. It kind of drives me crazy because they're all like, it's an oni, it's an oni. And I'm like, it's not an oni, bro. And let me tell you why. So this is kind of a classic no mask. For anyone unfamiliar, no masks are used in the theater. Basically, you're just wearing this one solid little mask. There's no moving parts or anything, and you perform your parts very, very dramatically. It's kind of the precursor to kabuki. So where things get interesting is Hanya masks, which this is just a standard woman mask, but we're gonna upgrade her to crazy levels. So Hanya translates roughly to. I had to kind of play with this one. I usually translate it as a horned demoness because I do not want to use the word oni necessarily. So these masks are unique to the No theater themselves. This is something you generally don't see outside of it, except for on American people with tattoos. So these Hanya were once human women, but they were transformed in life by their own jealousy or hatred into Hanya. And so we'll kind of go, we have our regular mask. So when the woman is in the play, well, usually it's men who dress as women. But anyway, the women mask is just the regular mask. And then we'll go into a namanari transformation, which means kind of like a raw transformation. And this is when she starts to transform as a result of her jealousy or hatred, generally a lover scorned kind of situation. So her face starts to change. We get some little horns protruding. The most important thing to notice is also look at the hair that is painted onto the mask. It's starting to get more and more disheveled, and her face is sort of a grimace rather than absolute rage. So this is the first step, and later in the play, as she transforms further, she'll become a chunari. Now, this is the one you see most commonly, actually, with for people who are like, "Oh yeah, I got this cool Oni tat, bro," and I'm like, if only you knew. But you can see that her hair is still disheveled, horns grew, her eyes have now turned gold, and her face is in this horrible grimace. So it doesn't look happy, sad, it just looks pained. And but she still has most of her facial features the same. She still has nose and ears. Her skin may be changing to red or sometimes black or green. It kind of depends on the play and the artists who are making them. And then the final step in the transformation is the honnari. So the honnari, the big difference is the mask will get a little bit more of a wild face about it. The hair gets a teensy bit more disheveled, horns get longer, fangs get bigger, and also her ears. Notice the difference here? We have ears, no ears. The reason is because when she's in this phase, the chunari, she can still hear Buddhist sutras. She could still be rescued from her state and change back and have her soul saved so she doesn't have to be reborn into a horrible form as a result of her, lifetime choices. But this one, once she's fully transformed, all you can do is kill her and exorcise her. There's no way to save this person anymore. One good thing is that generally they only target the guy who hurt them, so they will ruin his stuff by murdering him in the most horrible way possible. But other people, you just kind of stay out of the way, and she's just on her path towards rage mode. So these Hanya are kind of within the greater realm of Kijo, which are demonesses, and if they're old, it's an Onibaba, so it's a demon hag. So Hanya are part of this Kijo group, and so are Onibaba. But generally, you'll only see Hanya within no theater, whereas Kijo can appear in literature and folklore and Buddhist texts and everything. So Hanya kind of branched away as its own thing for the theater. So Kijo, once again, are demonesses, and these generally live in remote regions and try to lure people into their homes and eat them, especially infants or children. But they are not still Oni because these people, I'll use that roughly, have a whole different history. So if we compare the Hanya and the Kijo and everything with Oni, so Oni are widespread in folklore, literature, and Buddhism. Hanya are not. And Kijo aren't that widespread. Oni themselves are nearly always male. They're very large, whereas Kijo and Hanya are human-sized. Oni can be wicked spirits, evil deities, foreigners and strangers, as we talked about, and even good deities, which we'll get to a bit later. And in order to become an Oni, generally you're reborn after death as an Oni if you complete exceptionally wicked acts. So you're not even going to hell. You have to be reborn as one of these monsters. Or you go to hell and then your next life is still a monster because it was that bad. So, and also they eat humans too. But eating humans was kind of a common tactic for folkloric creatures, even in American or European ones. So here's a little, this is art by Matthew Mayer. Check out his books. He basically does these beautifully illustrated books and tells you some of the folklore of different yokai and monsters in Japan. On the left, we have a Kijo. You can see she's human shaped. She wears human clothes. She's just got claws and a really horrible face and wild hair. But you just brush her hair, she's probably fine. Get her a pedicure or whatever. All right, and then on the right we have an Oni, which you could see giant cave dwelling, meant to be absolutely massive, extremely muscular, wild colored skin, and there's a big difference. So we can't really say that Kijo or Hanya are female equivalents of Oni, because there are such a thing as female Oni. The Hell Scrolls have occasionally female Oni, and some of them just do exist. So always keep in mind Kijo and Hanya, those like horribly grimacing faces, that is actually a different subset of creature. That is not Oni. I'll argue on that one. Fight me. All right, we're at the halfway mark, so we're doing pretty good. So we're going to look at now early modern Oni. So roughly in the Edo period, when printing becomes more and more popular, it becomes more affordable to make prints with woodblock printing. A lot of great things happened. Oni and imagery in general became very playful and fun. They're still monsters, but Japan made them a little bit more comical. You could see the one on the right putting out a fire. I just think he's adorable. The one in the center with all the blue are a bunch of Oni creating thunder so that they can, use it on Earth. You can see that some of them are in the clouds. And then on the middle, you have Oni in monk's robes. So that's a nice crossover for, uh, what you would consider, oh, Oni, that's like the bad guy's Buddhism, right? Like, no, this guy's trying to like find himself and reach enlightenment. And then on the left, you have an Oni kind of in aristocratic outfit who's planning and getting ready to paint or compose a poem, judging by the paper that he has there. So an Oni working on poetry. And for the one that's blue, give a little zoom in here. This is really fun. You can see them playing and having a great time, beating the drums, forming their very strangely shaped lightning bolts, creating rain, painting the clouds black on the left with the guy with the little brush. And one of the Onis on the bottom left, he's my favorite. He's covering his ears because it's loud between the thunder noises and also the rambunctiousness of the other Oni. So you could see the imagery has gone from, oh, these guys are scary to, oh, look how fun, look how silly. And this is kind of where things start shifting in the Edo period. Okay, and now let's see where creepy becomes cute. So I really think one of the biggest changes was after World War II when anime started becoming and manga started becoming a bit more popular and it kind of created a miniature boom. We had Gegege no Kitaro, which is eh, it's kind of a rough one, but the the creator Mizuki Shigeru, he couldn't say his own name well when he was a little kid, so he would say instead of Shigeru, Gegeru, and so that's kind of where the Gegege came from. It was his childhood nickname. But it also can kind of refer to a creaking sound when you walk across wood or just creeping sounds and things like that. So it has some options. And Kitaro is the name of our main character. So here is number one of the manga. You can see it's very, very much like post World War II art style. But you can see it's not really meant to be super scary. The characters are kind of goofy and cute. And the story focuses on young Kitaro, the last survivor of the ghost tribe, and his adventures with other ghouls and strange creatures in Japanese mythology. So it's actually a really fun little story, especially for people who love yokai. So it's based on Kamishibai, which you can see here. We have a Kamishibai old man. He's telling the stories with the paper set up in his little booth there, and he just switches out the paper to different papers to tell a story. So it's kind of almost like a picture book, but it's meant to be public so that a lot of people can view it at once. This was a lot more popular back then, especially pre and just post World War II. And here's a really good illustration of what it would look like. You see it was almost always an older man, and he would carry this big box, the wooden box with all the papers in it, on his bicycle, and he'd usually bring a bunch of sweets to give the kids who were watching. So it's a nice little community engagement activity. So the story started as a kamishibai in the 1930s called Hakaba Kitaro, and it was written by Ito Masami and Keiyo Tatsumi. So the story wasn't 100% originally Mizuki Shigeru's, but he adapted it. So the Gegege no Kitaro franchise has 7 anime adaptations, 7 different ones across the years, and 11 movies. So if you haven't heard of it, go find out because it's big. Everyone in Japan, they're like, oh yeah, I know Kitaro. So my personal favorite was Hakaba Kitaro, which was made in 2008. It really embraced the spookier side of everything, and I just enjoyed the art and the textures used very much so. So if you want to watch any, and you don't want to watch like the old black and white ones right off the bat or anything, this is a really good modern adaptation. Okay, we're actually going to watch the intro because I want you to see the old 1968 intro just so you can get an idea. And the intro song was actually sung by and made by Mizuki Shigeru himself. The first several adaptations actually use the same song as well and his voice work. All right, let's give a listen.
ゲゲゲゲゲのゲ朝は寝床でグーグーグー楽しいな楽しいな お化けにゃ学校も試験も何にもないゲゲゲゲゲのゲみんなで歌おうゲゲゲのゲゲゲゲゲゲのゲ夜は墓場で運動会楽しいな楽しいなお化けは死なない病気も何にもないゲゲゲゲゲのゲみんなで歌おうゲゲゲのゲみんなで歌おうゲゲゲのゲみんなで歌おうゲゲゲのゲみんなで歌おうゲゲゲのゲ
So, hope you like that. Hope that stuck in your head all day too, so that you get tempted to watch it. So then we kind of take a shift. I'm jumping ahead several years, of course, but we start to get into kawaii oni and kawaii yokai basically after World War II and after Kitaro's time. So, Urusei Yatsura, for those of you who aren't familiar, was from the late 70s to early 80s, manga by Takashi. Oh, sorry, there's a cat jumping all over me. Takahashi Rumiko. And it's a 34 volume manga, so actually quite prolific. A lot of people know these characters because it came out when they were kids. Um, well, a lot of older people anyway, so. The anime itself had 4 seasons from 81 to 86. And then it was actually rebooted in 22 for 2 seasons. So if you wanted to watch modern adaptations, those actually are very fresh, and the most recent season came out this year. So the premise is the Oni, an alien race, challenged humanity to a game of tag to decide Earth's fate. Ataru Moro... Come on, sorry, cat's fussy. Ataru Moroboshi, an unlucky high schooler, must catch Ramu, the Oni leader's daughter, by touching her horns. After a week of evasion, Ataru wins by snatching Ramu's bikini top. Misunderstanding his celebration as a marriage proposal, Ramu falls for him and moves in, sparking chaos. So we have the cute, sexy Oni coming in now. And I probably don't have quite enough time to do the little intro, but if you want to watch it, you can find the intro and the old anime very easily. And I'm sure Crunchyroll and some maybe not savory sites will have the modern ones even. Oops, just trying to skip past, but I cannot. And there's a cat just not being friendly here. There we go. Maybe it'll let me now. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to kind of get into Onis from the 90s on. So this is probably closer to a lot of people's generations and whatnot. Oh my gosh, I'm just going to kick my cat off my table. I love you, but please stop. So, of course, you have Dragon Ball Z, one of our classics. Oni appeared in there as actually the rulers of hell. Season 1, Goku dies, and he ends up running off the bridge at some point or falling and going to the hell realm, I guess, below. And Oni were basically the bosses as just muscle bound guys. Very goofy, very silly, but classical imagery. We have Inuyasha, which also has a ton of yokai and oni characters in it. So that one was 96 to 2008. And for those of you who don't want to watch the older stuff, you can just skip ahead and watch the Yasha Hime anime that came out basically based on the kids of the main characters of it, which ended just a couple years ago in the manga. Gantz, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's crazy. This is from the manga itself. It has several yokai and oni characters in it. And of course, the one on the top, as we've learned, is not oni. She's a Hanya. You can see the original, like, no mask face on the right, like the pre transformed, and on the left, after transformed. So, huzzah. But as you can see, the one on the left has ears. So, that's technically the mid transformation version, not the final transformation version. So, you're going to learn all kinds of stuff today. Then we have Hozuki's cool-headedness, or Hozuki no Reitetetsu. This one's a personal favorite. It's basically about the Oni and Hell and how they run the whole place just like a big business. Everyone has jobs, they clock in, they have certain tasks they must do every day, and it's just very cute because it treats it kind of like a big company rather than, a horrible place to suffer. It can be a little violent at times because it is based on hell, but it's meant to be silly and have a lot of good gags. So, very much personal favorite. I think I have most of the manga itself. And it's also an anime. Of course, most of you know Demon Slayer. There's tons of Oni in there. However, they really, really switched up the Oni in general and put in vampire lore. Like, because Oni in Japan, they could come out into the sun. That was just something Demon Slayer kind of added on to perhaps create a bit more of a story and also more of a weakness for the Oni themselves. So they added vampire lore and Oni, and most of them don't even have horns. They don't have the tusk-like fangs or anything like that. So they took a lot of liberties, but I mean it is a fun watch. The animation is beautiful. So if nothing else, check it out for the animation. And then we have Oni the Thunder God's Tale in 2022. I forgot to include an image for this. I'm mid finals right now, so I am literally dying. But that one's on Netflix, and I think it's actually uh, yeah, you can put it in Japanese, but it was actually made to be an English movie. The director and co-director worked together on it. It's based on a book that the director's mother wrote when he was a kid. So it's really fun to watch. I definitely recommend it. And it's just a movie, so you could pop it in and finish it in an hour or two. Then there's Onipan, which is a little bit newer. It's about a bunch of Oni who put on these little pants and can turn into humans and to try and help solve human problems. So, very cute, kind of more traditional, like each one has horns, and then you have these little tiger striped pants. Very cute. And then more recently, I have not seen this one yet. It's kind of on a to-do list. Is My Oni Girl, available on Netflix to watch? I don't even know the premise of this one. I just thought it looked really cute. So if you're interested in Oni, it is a newer one that you can catch on Netflix. So those are kind of the more recent ones, and you can see that a lot of the lore has kind of stuck around, but they've taken a lot of artistic liberties the more time goes on, because we understand, oh, if it has horns, it's probably Oni. Or if they say they're Oni, sure, we'll take it for its word. Demon Slayers, crazy vampire rules. I mean, at least they don't sparkle, huh? All right. So, what are Oni then? So it just depends on the place, time, setting, and who's asking, really, because it could be a lot of different things. They could be the jailers of hell. They could be ghosts. They could be gods, silly tricksters, misunderstood outsiders, cute aliens, pretty anime boys with emo tendencies, or any place in between. They're just a lot of flexibility on their interpretations. And honestly, time, place, occasion is the big key deciding factor on what they are. However, if you show a classic image like this, basically anyone Japanese is going to go, ah, Oni. 100%. It's got horns, it's got the iron bat, it's got tiger stripes. Pretty straightforward. Oops. So that's what I had for you for today. I hope you got to learn something and enjoy a little bit.